Well, it sure is good to be here in Harvard Square. I It's kind of nice to get out of Washington these days. The White House's reaction to the book was vigorous. So my trip here tonight is being sponsored by the Witness Relocation Program. No one will find him in Harvard Square, that's for sure. I used to live up here. My wife who's here. Our kids were born here. All those key moments of life unfolding happened here in Harvard Square, many of them early. We trolled the bookstores. I guess there are fewer bookstores than there were 20 years ago. I'm sorry to hear that. But sure, this is one robust place here, isn't it? Hey, so what I'm going to do is being in a bookstore and in this intellectual capital, I'm actually going to read a few little portions of the book, which is something I don't do all that much. I certainly don't do it on cable television in my 4 minutes of screaming. I'm mostly being screamed at, but tonight I'm going to read a little bit. I'll talk about the book, and then do the thing which is loveliness for me, which is open it up to questions. This is the kind of group you just want to yak with, and I'm sure there are good questions in the audience. There's been a lot of publicity about the book. At this point, I think a lot of people have read the book, and so we can actually talk about the book, which is a thing of loveliness for me. The history here, the recent history, of course, is that the White House got its copy on Friday prior to publication. This is now widely known, I gather. And the New York Times had gotten it the day before. So the disclosures, some of the disclosures, there's lots in here that wasn't, of course, noted in those first noisy offerings. But that became kind of this dust storm of push and shove prior to the publication of the book. By the time the book was ready to be in the bookstores the following Tuesday, a few interesting things had happened. The president and the White House clearly had seen some of the signature quotes, including the one from a person I know who was near and dear to all of you, Larry Summers. Not here tonight, Larry. And where he says, and I think now famously, after an economic briefing, he said this quite often, the Larry Summers Home Alone riff, it was called, where he would leave said briefing on various subjects and he would turn to his fellow advisor to his left and right and said, "We are home alone. There is no adult in charge, and Bill Clinton would never make these mistakes." Now, Larry has a history for acerbic framing of issues. This, I think, is even for him, up high on the charts. It's interesting because that becomes something that troubled people. Summers' genius is, in fact, framing arguments. That is his particular skill. And people wondered, is Larry framing this right? Are we home alone? Are we ever anything but home alone? This is one of the things I posit in the book. Peter Orszag, who discusses his feelings about Larry's Home Alone riff and can actually cite a specific instance where they sort of discussed it and the follow-up to that, he opines about this. I say at the end of the book, the case for government is to somehow lance that fear that all of us, I think, understand that there is no one in charge, that the things that we face in this country, the global forces that buffet us, are beyond anyone's control, even management. And the case for government is that that's not the case. That someone's in charge so we can sleep at night and get on with our lives. And that case is one that this administration has tried to make. I don't think always successfully. I think they generally get an A for effort, if something lower than that in execution. And the game is far from over. So having said that, let me read a couple interesting little parts. I don't get to read very much. But this book follows this president prior to his being this president, from his days as a senator. It starts in 2007, and in the work of narrative, you try to fit together pieces that create a kind of verisimilitude of the life that we see day to day. And you do it in present tense. I try not to look back, saying, if we knew now what we knew then, or in hindsight, obviously that's true. I try to walk in the shoes of characters. I've done it with all the books, all 5 books now. So you can only know what they knew and what we knew at this moment. And in 2007, in the summer, Barack Obama is an asterisk. He's a good 30 points behind Hillary Clinton. He's an interesting guy, clearly a great speaker. People knew the 2004 address in front of the Democratic convention. But he's kind of tetchy. This isn't working very well. And he has an economic briefing on the 1st of August where a team, many of whom would follow him to the White House, but not be the innermost circle. Austin Goolsbee, Alan Kruger, who's a little off to the side, others gather. And they say, look, this economy, well, it's not all it's cracked up to be. In some ways, these advisors lay out the evidence that after 30 years of flatlining income or even declining income for many groups, we are living on borrowed time. The response was to load up on debt, lots of debt, more than 100% of GDP, well over, more than we've ever had sort of burdening us up to now. Now, of course, Wall Street created a terrific model for this great debt trading machine that was so profitable. By 2007, financial services accounts for 41% of corporate profits in the United States, unheard of. And debt, in the old debt equity kind of balance, is outnumbering equity 4-1 in terms of the balance sheets and the profits of the big financial houses. And really the model, I'll just say this briefly, but the model that everyone now understands they embraced in that kind of capital cartel of the financial capital of New York, and this is about two capitals after all, Washington, our political capital, New York, our financial capital, fighting it out for direction of the country. They've been fighting since the beginning of the Republic, is that New York had built an extraordinary confection where that capital from many good decades in America and some real robust growth of profits, that capital was mostly getting invested overseas. The margins are terrific overseas. No environmental regulations. In China, form a union, you're going to jail. And, frankly, child labor, terrific profit margins. Really good stuff. That's where the money was going. Meanwhile, in large measure, America, burdened even then in 2007, was being shorted. That was the place where you sold debt. And not just debt, your father or grandfather's debt, a new kind of innovation in debt. And that meant that basically you could sell debt, all kinds of debt, packaged, securitized, tranche. We all know these terms now. We didn't really know them in 2007. And the key was I could sell it and make profit from it, but not be on the hook because I no longer held the risk. I no longer was accountable as the seller of debt. It moved hand to hand, often to unsophisticated buyers. I had already made my money as the big Wall Street house or the big bank. And then when it goes down, and they knew it was going to go down at some point in large measure, essentially, I'm off the hook. The profits are privatized, the disasters are socialized, government will step in, and the too big to fail nightmares to come. That's where we were. Obama sees this, and he sees this through the eyes of characters who are near him. He sees the economy is hollowed out, just like a rickety structure with a fresh coat of paint. One good speed bump, one gust of wind, that thing's going down. He sees that. He's troubled. A few days later, he gets a call on the 4th of August, his 46th birthday. Gets a call from a Wall Street titan who adores him, a guy named Robert Wolf, head of UBS in America. He's the real deal. And he just, he says, a non-sexual crush on this guy. He'd take a bullet for him. And a lot of people gathered around Obama in this 2007 period, quite stunned by him. What a character. Haven't had one like him in, my God, in common memory. And Wolf is standing on the 4th of August on the flying deck of a 110-foot Lazara. That's a boat, in case some of you don't know. Big one. From here to the door and twice over. It's got 4 bedrooms. It's got a library. It's got a desalinization system on the boat. And he's up on the flying deck. It's a hedge fund manager that used to work for him at UBS. Now, this hedge fund manager is melting down. It's all going bad. The great credit eruptions. This is about a week and a half before everyone starts to see it. And this guy, Sal Narrow, the hedge fund guy, is cursing into the phone. And Robert Wolf, advisor to Obama, really, though, mostly a contributor. He ran a lot of the Wall Street money raising for Obama. He sees it and he goes up to the flying